This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
Hi folks, Dr. Barb from the OI podcast here. Just a content warning note at the start of the show to say this week's episode does contain sensitive content around pregnancy, suicide and abortion. So please just be aware that that content is here, and if you're worried, skip this episode. We have information in the episode description for those in need. You've joined the OI podcast, and welcome. The OI podcast, the Otago Institute podcast, conversations with experts from the worlds of arts, sciences and mataranga Māori. Brought to you by the Otago Institute, the Otago branch of the Royal Society for Arts and Sciences. And you can join our members just by going to our website, and you will contribute to all the amazing things that the Otago Institute does, including this podcast series, but not limited to this podcast series. Check out our website, and do check out all those by-election candidate interviews that we've done. So what we did was we invited all the candidates along, and they all answered the same questions, and they had a time limit. So there's not a whole lot of waffle. We wanted to make it nice and easy and simple for the listeners to just get what do they really think? What do they really think about them? Interesting and important issues for us, the voters of Dunedin. So it's just a chance to get to know your candidates. Now, today in the studio, we have got Morag McKenzie. No mai haere mai. Welcome, Morag.
Kia ora. Thank you, Tanna.
And thank you so much for coming along. It's fantastic to have you here in the studio.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
And I've known Morag for several years now, ever since my first appalling attempt at socks. So a lot of people around town will know you, well, around the whole of Aotearoa will know you as Vintage Pearls.
Yeah, a few people. I wouldn't say a whole lot of people.
No, surely all of those yarnies out there will know you as Vintage Pearls.
I do now feel like I'm the old lady of the indie knitting scene. Yeah.
Oh, no.
18 years.
18 years. 18 years you've been at it. And I mention that not just as a little promo into Morag's amazing yarniness there, but also because that's what brought us to today's special. It's a murder mystery today.
It's not a murder mystery, but it might look like one. It's a mystery.
It's a mystery. It's a bit like one of those. I've been revisiting Shetland.
Yeah.
I've been revisiting.
Oh, the series,
The series, yes.
I watched the first few series and I'm like, no, I have to know part of this. It was too much grim, too much murder, too many women's bodies at bottoms of cliffs. Yeah. But beautiful place. Beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, my forefathers are from the Shetland Islands, but my husband's got very mixed feelings about it because he says, it's quite nice to start with, but then it's very bleak.
Yeah, it's very bleak. Yeah.
Because it's kind of like there's always a bit of a breeze. It's always kind of grey and amazing, stunning, but like there's nothing
between you and the elements. No.
Yeah, and there's kind of no horizon either. Like it just keeps going forever. There's no mountains.
It makes you feel insignificant, I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no trees. There's no shelter.
There's parts of New Zealand that are a bit like that too.
There are, and I suspect there's no coincidence that there's a lot of people in this part of the country, in this part of the world, that have their roots back in the Shetland Islands. And
or Scotland as a whole.
Yeah.
Yes, we're built for these landscapes in some ways. Yeah.
It sort of seems like it's where we go. Anyway, now you come to this. You've been. So your background, I guess, way back when, was a BA from the University of Otago.
Yes, I did art history and theory. I did a BA and then I did a postgraduate diploma, and then I started on a master's, and like many people ran out of money and, will to live and and decided I needed to get a job for money.
Right.
Then I weirdly went and worked in the computer science department at university for about a decade.
You're so weirdly, but it's not that weird, is it?
Well, it's a little weird. I mean, I had no background in computer science, but we're talking about the late 90s, early 2000s, where pretty much no one had a background in computer science because it was quite a new...
It was just really just getting started. I mean, that's when we first started getting emails and...
Oh, yeah. I mean,
there wasn't Google, like there was multiple web browsers.
There wasn't Google, no. There was Yahoo, I think.
Yeah, and Go Ask Jeeves?
Yeah, a little bit later. But yeah, like literally I taught first year computing. And when we first taught it was like we taught how to turn a computer on.
Yeah.
We had things called floppy disks and all that stuff. And then the internet came along and that's actually where my forte was. I taught web development stuff.
Oh, right, yeah.
And so, we taught them to build basic web pages. But there was a time you go online and you could surf the entire web in an afternoon. Like, it wasn't big.
It wasn't big, yeah. It seems crazy that it's something that we remember.
Yeah, in our lifetime.
Lifetime. And when floppy disks were floppy.
And we're old, but we're not that old.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We're not that old.
Not that old. No, a completely different world. And I remember getting my first university email address.
Yeah,
and
me
I didn't
too.
bother to. You could have had one, I think, when I started in '94, because email has existed before the World Wide Web existed. But I'm like, what would be the point? I could see no point in having an email address.
Yeah.
That's like, why would I want that?
Yeah.
And then, I think maybe I was postgrad before I actually used it.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It was,
And the whole interloan system with library books and getting and when you went to get journal articles, you actually went to the I spent hours and hours and hours in the science library.
Oh, I lived in the main library because I was doing arts. Absolutely lived there.
Yeah. No, and every article that I wanted that was in a journal that we didn't have, I'd fill out a form and I'd take it down and they'd send it away and then
you'd get a photocopy.
And you'd get a
back.
photocopy of the article back in a little envelope, and every week I'd get a bundle of journal articles that somebody else had photocopied and sent back to me. And I had one of those little cubby holes in the science library.
The paperwork involved in our dissertations, outrageous.
Yeah. But I got a lot of soft skills in photocopying.
Yes. I mean, like, it doesn't matter when you do it, whatever time. It's just those research skills, isn't it? It's just that
knowing what line to follow, but I think I think there's whatever subject you're doing. I think there's a bit of critical thinking and knowing,
Definitely.
like figuring out what's important and what's the thing that's where's trustworthy sources.
Yeah, any undergraduate degree should really just teach you how to think, how to identify solid information, how to think logically and collate stories, whether they be scientific or artistic.
Or
in
artistic,
nature.
And I'm a big believer in people who do science degrees doing a few humanities papers and vice versa, because I think...
You say vice versa, but some of us are not gifted in the sciences.
Yeah, but I don't think... I think it's just some of those basic... There are basic kind of statistic, like just that help you through life, I
Absolutely.
think. And just an awareness of that. And I think, you're saying some of us are not gifted that way, but people in sciences will say the same about humanities. And
Absolutely. And you do have to push yourself. I mean, I was never gifted at maths, but I still did it all the way through high school because I understood. And weirdly, I'm very good at the maths that I need for my world.
Yeah, and I mean, knitting's got lots of maths in it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really amazes me with knitting is when people say, oh, I can't do maths. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not really maths. It's like divide by 2 and add 2.
No, it is. I mean, a pie shawl is literally built on the mathematical concept of pi. I mean, there's a lot of overlap, but there's overlaps between music and maths. There's overlaps between lots of concepts.
I mean, I guess not that there's not maths in knitting, but I think that we make it sound more difficult and complicated because we label it as maths, and then people...
That's also a gendered thing, though. We have a long-running stigma around women and maths, and it's annoying. We need to get rid of it, and we've been told it's hard. It's not hard.
And I think that's the thing, is when people tell you it's hard...
Yeah, you believe them. You shouldn't believe anyone who tells you something's hard.
No, I don't think so. It's just a matter of getting familiar with it.
You should try it for yourself and then you can decide.
And I think there's a lot of mental blocks go on around
heaps,
it as well.
Heaps. As someone who teaches in that space, so I'm teaching adults a lot, mental blocks are, people's own barriers are the thing between them and the success that they want 99.9% of the time.
I think so,
Definitely.
And everything we can do to reduce those barriers.
That's all I do, as I'm just a cheerleader. Like, they don't not have the skills. I'm just sitting there going, you can do it, you can do it.
And you must see it a lot with different types of knitting. Like if people have been knitting shawls all their lives and they're like, oh, but I can't knit socks.
Socks, the myth that socks are difficult because you've got to turn a heel. And that is don't get me wrong. I think there's two schools of camps. So people go, oh, knitting is nana knitting, so it must be really easy. No, your nana was really smart. Nanas are not idiots. Nanas have wonderful world experience and are very capable people. So no, what they do isn't easy. Like, you can't just pick it up and knit a sock. But it's also something that people have been doing for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Yeah.
So it's not rocket science.
Yeah. But then, I know in rocket science, and he was like, yeah, because I said to him, what do you guys say? If it, everybody says it's not rocket science, he says, well, rocket science isn't actually that difficult.
No, exactly.
It's just like,
it's just new. It's just
something that you don't know, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I think that's a big thing.
And rockets are newer than textiles. But fundamentally humans have been making textiles all our existence.
That's a long time that we've been making. And it's
really
quite
core
interesting to go to find to go through the anthropology type where they get the very first bits of fabric.
But we can't because it disappears, material doesn't survive. So we have all these things that are early, but they're not that early in the grand scheme of things.
And some of the really early, some of the earliest ones, they're so clearly technologically developed that they're they're obviously...
This is not where we started.
This is not where we started, yeah.
No, we did not drag ourselves out of primordial sludge and then make this amazing sock.
No.
But
so you can sort of see by how amazing the bits and the tiny little fragments, things that have got stuck in a peat bog somewhere.
Oh, that stuff's amazing.
And
here, up in Lawrence... Monica Tromp, archaeologist.
I don't know
put
about
you on
this.
to. She's local. So she's a knitter extraordinaire,
right,
but also she's been doing archaeology. They did some in up in Lawrence, and they found textiles.
Oh, wow.
In those graves. So again, right ground conditions to preserve them, and the excitement when you find textiles.
Oh no, it's amazing.
That are 100, 150 years old. Extraordinary, because that just doesn't happen every day.
So that's sort of European gold mining.
Yeah, European, and of course we had Chinese people in the area and so forth. So there's a number of things, but they found leather, they found textiles inside leather. Yeah.
When we were in the UK, we went to Hadrian's Wall, and they've got some amazing stuff from the Romans. So that's sort of before 400 AD, whatever you call it. Yeah, like Common Era. Yeah. So it's kind of like 1600 years old, and they've got belt buckles and bits of leather shoes and some of the kind of postcards asking people for dinner and stuff is just absolutely amazing. The wives of the, I don't know what they're called, captains or leaders of the military who were there. But you could see the whole, because wherever there was a fort, there was a whole village,
a whole community
around it. And so you get that whole kind of,
humans can't exist alone. There's always a massive infrastructure around those things.
It's quite...
we just write about the sexy bits. We don't write about that every day. Yeah.
Anyway, so now I've got you here to talk about this murder in quote marks mystery, and how you got onto it, because it's quite an interesting story. So take me back. So where I first learned about this was, of course, at Unwind this year. So Unwind is this big knitting get together that Morag runs every second year.
We ran it for every year up until COVID.
Right,
we were extraordinarily lucky with COVID.
Yes,
we had one in March of 2020.
Just weeks
and then
before
2 weeks later, we all went to lockdown. And everyone went, and we weren't a super spreader event, thank goodness. That was just luck, because honestly, that was a possibility. I've run it since 2012.
Right,
annually to 2020, and now it's quite a lot of work, so I decided I'd do it every second year.
Well, no, it's good. And James from, he's in Wellington now, isn't he? He's sort of taken up the baton, and he's going to do it every other year, so that there's...
although he's now moved from Greytown to Wellington, so we'll see what happens. But But
I think he's surely still going to do it.
Oh, no, James, you can't hold him back. There's been a variety of things, but I've always wanted there's days where you just show up and buy yarn, but Unwind isn't that. Unwind, I mean, we do obviously have facilities to take your money from you.
all the amazing traders that are there, and the traders
we do that because we still do want to buy nice things, but it's community has always been the absolute heart of that for me. You don't. I'm of the belief, I'm a horrible socialist sort of lefty kind of person. I'm of the belief that you can't have a business or a life really without community. You need to build that community for everything else to sit on top of it. So the community aspect is really important to me. So it's kind of, and we don't just do strictly knitting. We've always done sort of other things. And every now and again, I do like a sort of history lecture thing in it because there's some rabbit hole that I've fallen down and I'm like, someone has to hear this. The knitters will understand because if nothing else, they come along and they knit for an hour while they listen to something. Knitters love
fantastic.
podcasts.
It's fantastic. And there is a knitting podcast called Just Another Knitting Podcast. Yeah. And that's kind of the level of knitting podcasts.
There's so many knitting podcasts.
There's and I think that whole kind of just sitting there and knitting, and why I love the first year I went, I did do the courses, workshops, and it was quite frantic because I
you
thought
took on a lot. I remember.
I have to do everything. I have to do everything.
No,
everything. And then
pace yourself.
And then the next time I went, I thought, okay, I'm just going to do kind of the ones that come with the registration, the talks and the built-in stuff. And I really enjoyed that because basically I went to the Traders Hall, I looked around, I did all the cool competitions that are there, the treasure hunt and everything, and I just chatted with all the people there and I looked at all the amazing garments that everybody had made. And it's a great place to just talk about different yarns and different patterns.
You can sort of blurt out any weird thing and they're going to completely understand what you're talking about. And it's inspirational. You see all these other people working on it. It's just, you come away buzzing, I think.
Yeah, I think so, every year.
Yeah.
And this year I really liked it because there was such a kind of, should I say, eclectic set of talks that went with it. So it was a bit more diverse from just everyone standing up and saying, this is my journey in knitting.
No, I really love, I will listen to anybody who speaks with passion.
Yeah.
I don't really care what the topic is because I just love people's passion about their thing.
So you should take over the OI when I go on.
But this is exactly why you do that, because we don't, stories told with passion are always interesting. And I like heaps of knitting friends, but like the knitting element is probably one of the least interesting things about them to me because
it's like that original thread that brings you together.
Absolutely, but then it's the thing that builds the friendships because that's what brings you together. But they all have amazing stories, and women in particular have amazing stories they often don't tell. And I really like to get them to tell their stories. And I bully people into presenting. I mean, that sounds terrible. I don't. I encourage people repeatedly. And a lot of them are very nervous to do it and then give the most extraordinary presentations. Yeah. Which is just delightful. And then they've come out of themselves. Again, it's that thing where I'm sort of trying to tear down barriers on many fronts. If I make you present, if I encourage you to do that, once you've done it, you will never feel as nervous about it again. Yeah. Because
you're never as nervous as the first time.
Nothing bad happened. Everyone was really interested in what you had to say.
Yeah. And we've actually had Jenna Lee Pfeiffer here on the show.
Yes,
she was fantastic.
Yeah. So a person I bullied at the last minute because she filled in for someone else. But again, Jenna Lee's a mate, so it's like a lot of my mates are teachers, so it's very handy to twist their arms to.
It's great. Hey, and I guess we should get on to the story.
The story, okay. The Tanna Hill mystery is what it was called.
The Tanna Hill mystery.
And you're like, well, how did I... And it's a Dunedin story. It's a Dunedin history story.
Yeah. And I'm just going to interrupt you there because it's a Dunedin story. And the first thing I thought is, where's Tanna Hill?
Exactly. And how I found it is based on Tanna Hill. So my great-great-great-grandmother, a woman called Agnes Dickey, landed in Dunedin in 1863. Coming off a farm called Tanna Hill in Ayrshire in Scotland. And so I was I'd started a new line of yarn, which is kind of a mix of like the best of New Zealand and the best of kind of traditional yarn. So it's a merino yarn, but it's like woolen spun in the old school Shetland way.
Oh, okay.
Because I love colour work and traditional kind of garmenty stuff. So I'd had a yarn milled here, but kind of it's milled in a kind of old school way.
Right. Is that from Wild Earth?
No, it's from Wool Yarns in Lower Hutt.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. There's fewer and fewer mills to choose from in New Zealand, unfortunately. So, I've used them all at one point in time. But anyway, so I was researching my grandmother. I knew I wanted to have a name connected to my family. I liked the name Tanna Hill. I thought, okay, that's the name I'm going to use for my yarn. But I want to know her story more. I want to understand. I knew a bit of it because my family's very good at telling those stories, but I wanted more information. So I knew she landed in Dunedin and they rented a house here on 4th Street for a while, and then she got married and then she moved further south, and she actually spent most of her life in Southland. But I wanted to know more about her time in Dunedin, so I was searching because we have these amazing resources here. Not only can you go down to Toitu and they've got lots of fabulous resources there you can access, But we have Papers Past, which is like Past is like my YouTube. I don't know. It's like, that's where you can just find so many cool stories from the past. But so
that's Papers Past is newspapers, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's our online digital archive of newspapers throughout New Zealand.
Yeah. And how do you get access to that? Is it just free?
Paperspast.co. No, it's not .co. It must be like GOVT. Just Google Papers Past. It's free, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is where your degree comes in handy because you do really have to understand how to search effectively for stuff. You can limit what you search in. It's not just papers, it's documents of all kinds, all sorts of things. There's a whole lot of categories. But the newspapers are good for finding everyday people. Glimpses of everyday people. Because
there's that stuff, there's the little interest articles, and of course there used to be more newspapers in Dunedin. There didn't used to just, the ODT's pretty much always been here.
But we had the Evening Star, which was the eve. So we had 2 newspapers a day. So we had the ODT came out in the morning and the Evening Star came out in the evening. Because that was your thing. Like the newspaper was everything. It was the internet, radio, and everything combined into one. So everybody read the newspaper, and it told you the arrivals into town and the departures from town on ships, and it told you who was on those ships. So it literally told you this ship rolled in and these are the people on it.
Which is quite amazing, really,
Absolutely,
isn't it?
But it means you can trace people because otherwise it's like births, deaths, marriages, fine, but that's not really telling you about their movements in everyday life.
Like births, deaths and marriages is kind of few and far between points in someone's life.
Well, you'd hope. Sometimes the births come quite frequently. But you're only born once, you only die once, exactly. And the other thing is women are quite hard to trace because they change their names and they're not recorded in the same way men are in history because they don't own property. They aren't generally on boards and things where they'd get mentioned more frequently. So I was not only looking for her, so her name was Agnes. I was looking for her, but I was looking for sort of things related to her. And quite often, if you wander around the northern or southern cemetery, you quite often see people on their tombstones, they say where they came from. Yeah. There was something they brought with them. Knowing where you came from and sort of using that somehow in your life was important. Yeah. So another part of my family had a farm in Southland they called Glenlyon because they came from the Glenlyon part of Scotland. Yeah. So I thought, I wonder if they've ever used the term Tanna Hill. Yeah. Because that's where they came from. Now, they didn't own Tanna Hill. They rented it. They were leaseholders because all that land was owned by an English lord, as most land was in South Scotland. It's a whole other story. But they had lived and farmed on that area for several generations. Right. So I thought the name might be important to them and they might have brought with them. And that's how I found this Tanna Hill mystery. I'm like, what now?
So you're searching through all these papers plus just for reference. Like
I'm looking for keywords.
Keywords. Anyone who said Tanna Hill.
Hoping I can find something that would kind of connect back to her in some way.
So you look for Agnes and
one of those
Tanna
keywords,
Hill, basically.
The problem is lots of Agneses.
Yeah, because it was a really common name back then. Not so much now.
No, but, so 1863, my Agnes lands. Yeah. 1903, I find this Tanna Hill mystery with this woman called Agnes Campbell. Right. Who is shown up dead in Dunedin on something called Tanna Hill. I'm like, hang on a minute. Like, whoa, it's another Agnes. That's a bit eerie. Okay, it's not, statistically that's probably quite common, but it's like, okay. But I've lived in Dunedin all my life. Yeah. Generations before me have lived here. Where the hell is Tanna Hill?
Yeah, and when I went to your tour, and actually, previous to that, when I first saw your line of wool, I was like, and I was like, she's Scottish, maybe she's just gone Scottish or something. And I never thought more of it, but then when you were doing this talk, I was like, where is Tanna Hill? Yeah. Why is Morag?
Well, my Tanna Hill, like the yarn Tanna Hill is in Scotland. It's nothing to do with it because I'd already named it by that point, really. Like I knew, but I was just still searching for more information. Yeah. So yes, I came across this headline that said the Tanna Hill mystery, and it talked about this young woman who had died on Tanna Hill in Dunedin and a young man that was missing. And this was just post-COVID, I think, when I started looking at this, like 21, 22. So we still had kind of restrictions in place. And my knit group we normally meet on a Thursday night at the university, have done that for 20 years. But at this point in time, we couldn't meet there because the university had understandably some restrictions on how you could come and go. So we were meeting in a little place we rented. And I was showing up Thursday after Thursday with the new information, and whether they wanted to hear it or not, they got to hear the whole story over a course of a couple of weeks as I sort of pieced everything together. So if you backtrack a little bit from the Tanna Hill mystery, because that's not how it first came into the papers. There was this declaration that a young woman, so it was the Evening Star paper, so she'd been found that day, and the headline was young woman drowned. And then it said that Agnes Campbell, aged, I think they said 20, had been found in the Leith River. And a young man was missing, called John Osmond from South Dunedin, was missing. Pretty much none of that is actually accurate. Like, it's so funny. In the actual article, they say we don't understand how she's died, but the headline is that she's drowned.
Right.
Like, well, okay, she hadn't drowned. She wasn't found in the Leith. John Osmond was missing, and John Osmond is a young man she had known for some years. It was quite clear they were in a relationship for some years, at least 3 or 4 years at this point. He lived, down South Dunedin with his family. She lived here at somewhere called Athol Place, which again doesn't exist anymore. It's now Harrow Street.
Right.
And that whole area of town has kind of been changed a fair bit. When we did the whole 1925 exhibition here and we built Anzac Ave to connect down to Lake Logan became Logan Park, all that jazz. Yeah. A lot of that area
really changed the whole look of that area. It was quite a significant development.
And it was kind of a bit of a slummy area. Like they were a lot of family living in a very small house in a very poor part of town.
Yeah. And I guess right next to the shipyards.
Right next to the railway lines. The railway lines were right behind them. Yeah, and then the harbour now is sort of way away from there, but the harbour at the time was much, much closer because obviously we've reclaimed all that land. So, they were in the heart of industry. They're in like little tenement houses. That's where she lived. John lived down South Dunedin, what was called Cargill Road then, which is Hillside Road now. And he lived with his family, which were a bit more upper class. So her body has been discovered on Tanna Hill. It comes out the next day. And Tanna Hill is directly opposite the university at the time. The university at the time, 1903, is half of the registry building. So you've got the bit with the clock tower in it. You've got a bit of geology behind it.
Yeah. That's the quad buildings now for lectures, isn't it?
Yeah, what they call quad 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that bit. There's no what we think of, the pretty building with the archway in it now, what we call the archway, is not there. The archway lecture theatres are clearly not there. None of that's there. Yeah. The School of Mines is there, which they call the tin shed. That's this big shed with a chimney in it. And that leads right up to where Marama Hall, the kind of music area, sits now. And Union Street's there, but the university ends at Union Street.
Right.
And across the road is this scrubby hill called Tanna Hill, which technically still exists, but we have wiped it off the planet.
It's so strange.
We have flattened it, basically. And it was called Tanna Hill. I'm like, why is it called Tanna Hill? Because originally the botanists connected to the university went, we want to build a botanical gardens. We're going to build it on this hill. And then the Leith runs around the bottom of this hill, still does to this day.
Yeah.
And then on the flat
Even though the hill's not there.
No, the hill's not. The very base of it is there. Yeah. This hill's going to be the botanical gardens over the Leith and onto this flat area. This flat area that they probably should have thought of. Maybe they should have talked to some of the geologists. Why is it flat, guys? Because it's a floodplain. So they built themselves a nice botanical garden and then it flooded.
Right.
And then I think it flooded again and they went,
I mean, that's still a thing though, isn't it? The Leith River.
Yeah, exactly.
Flooding there.
So then they decided to put the botanical gardens where it is now.
Right.
So that was kind of abandoned.
So they just sort of shifted it to a hill on the other side of the registry building, basically.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. But it was always like university, I guess the university, I don't know, owned is the right word, but they had claimed this land to some degree. Yeah. So the Applied Sciences building, which is Applied Sciences and ITS now, or what was Tanna Hill, so that's all been levelled.
Oh, okay.
But the Applied Sciences didn't go in until about 1918. I think they laid the foundation stone for that, post-World War I. So in 1903, that is just a hill covered in scrub and a few trees that we'd planted at some point but then kind of abandoned. So it is quite a scrappy little thing. Yeah. They've cut the end off it already when they put Union Street in. They'd already kind of cut the end off. But it's pretty much just sort of wasteland. Local kids hang out there a bit. There's not much going on. Yeah. I mean, Dunedin's full of empty spaces at this point in time. We're not a well-built city, really, even in 1903. And her body is found there in the middle of the day. She's upright, she's sitting. There's no sign of damage on her, but she is not alive.
Yeah.
And yes, this young man she'd been hanging around with is missing, and they find at the end of, I can't remember if it's Tongue Wharf or Jetty Wharf, both of which exist today. So the Harbour Basin, Jetty Street, if you follow a line down the side of Harbour Basin, that's Jetty Wharf. Yeah. Tongue Wharf is the little one that runs off the side of it, pokes into Harbour Basin. So down there they found a hat, a bag and a few other bits and pieces connected to him. None of that came out. It didn't all come out like smoothly in the papers. Little bits of information came out. Things were somebody had found a bag down by the wharf but hadn't thought anything of it, thought someone had just left it and popped it in his office, thinking they'd come back.
And then it came out in the newspaper.
And it came out in the newspaper. He suddenly put 2 and 2 together, and he's like, oh, this might be his. So they thought that John Osmond had thrown himself in the harbour to commit suicide. Probably because he killed this young woman, right?
Right,
That's what we all think. It's kind of what I thought when I first read it.
Yeah, it's what I thought. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
She's Agatha Christie murder.
Yeah,
mystery,
that's right.
So,
but how has he killed it? Is it an ice bullet? Who knows? Whatever. It was weird. So they dredged the harbour for 2 days and didn't find him.
Right.
But, they were convinced he was in there. But then because they hadn't found his body and they still hadn't finished the inquest into Agnes Campbell's death, the rumours started to swirl, and the ODT got very excited and started to report all sorts of things like, carriages had gone missing and maybe he'd absconded to Oamaru and, have there been sightings here, there and everywhere. And
it's basically any sort of rumour then becomes
a
headline because there's kind of...
Exactly.
Everybody's interested in it. Everybody wants to see what's happening.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because the newspaper is a very different beast at the time, and you'd think now this would be front page news. It's never front page news.
Right.
Because the front page of the newspaper is not like that. The front page of the newspaper is for important business information, really. So this is always like page 6 and beyond.
Right.
But obviously, and it's not just limited to reporting here. It's reported throughout Otago and Southland and nationally.
Wow.
But it all happens reasonably quickly. So they hold the inquest at great speed into Agnes's stuff.
Yeah.
But here's where they start to be really cagey about what they say, because the inquest reveals she hasn't been poisoned, because that's one of the things they think of, because there's no signs on the body, so she'd been poisoned, right? There's no signs of poison.
And there's obviously no murder weapon anywhere.
There's and they say there's no blood on her body, which we'll come back to that because I think that might be a little bit unrealistic. But she's clearly not been strangled or, anything like that.
Yeah.
She's just dead.
Yeah.
And the inquest says she's dead because she's lost an extraordinary amount of blood and her heart has stopped, basically.
Right.
And the inquest also says things like, we've discovered other things that lead us to believe some stuff, but we're really not going to say what that is. Right. Because,
So it's this kind of weird mixture of, like, oversaying everything that's really not confirmed, and it's just rumours and like no basis in fact
and
for a lot of things.
Not saying.
And then that kind of Victorian, we're not going to say things because it's...
We can't.
Yeah.
We
so
can't.
there's that kind of, I don't know, is it politeness? It's not really politeness.
It's a social contract that we can't talk about certain things. And also the things the things they're not talking about are highly illegal.
Right, yeah.
So... At the time.
Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? So I guess there's some reticence to say things that they don't want to make accusations of illegal things, maybe.
Possibly. But I think it's just mostly a concept of public decency. And I actually suspect there would be rules around what they can say. I mean, we've just got rid of our Broadcasting Standards Authority. But
not quite yet. I think it's still...
Oh, well, okay. Okay. We won't start swinging really.
Let's not start there.
Yeah, whether or not you're a broadcaster is a whole other debate. But anyway, but at the time, there would definitely be things that the newspapers were not supposed to talk about.
Yeah.
And I think also, it's weird because they had no problem alluding to the fact that John has probably killed himself.
Right.
Like they were almost gleeful about that. You know, we predict his body's going to show up in the harbour. Ha ha ha.
Like, to the point where they'd gone and dredged the harbour for 2
days.
2 whole days, which can't have been
and they
easy.
But they weren't hiding that. So they were really happy to talk about suicide, which we're often not happy to talk about in today's world.
Yeah.
Like we're often very careful about how we talk about that because, we potentially believe that can have a knock-on effect. But we really don't want to talk about how Agnes has died.
Yeah.
Because Agnes has died because Agnes was pregnant and they were trying to end Agnes's pregnancy.
Right.
So we don't know exactly what happened. Like we can't know. Agnes is dead. She had been pregnant. They had somebody, whether it be her or John or a third party, have attempted to perform an abortion.
Right.
This is obviously highly illegal, so they've done it on a weird little scrubby hill in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And as these things often do, it's gone wrong. They've obviously perforated and she's bled out.
Yeah.
And he's fled. This is a woman he's been...
so there's obviously
seen for 3 years.
Yeah, so there's obviously quite a connection there, right? It's not that he's like abandoned her; he's obviously distraught.
They're planning to marry.
Yeah.
The families both say this. They were happy, and that his family, who are the better off socially, in no way try and pretend that this wasn't a relationship or that he wasn't intending to marry. Apparently, his room at home was full of furniture he was saving so that they could,
Interesting
build a house
how
together.
much work goes into. Like, before you get married, you have to have all your ducks in a row, pretty much.
Yeah, because remember, there's no social security at the time. So it's not like there's no working for families. There's nothing that they're not going to pay you for having babies. They're not going to pay you if you don't have a job. You are doing this on your own or through your family. So I think he works for his family business, so he's kind of set. Agnes worked as a tailoress at a place down in Princess Street. Her whole family works, but her whole family is still living on the absolute bones. Like, they have nothing extra.
And presumably her wages are...
they'll be tiny.
Tiny, but also being used in the family to keep the rest of the family...
Yeah, so originally, she was born in Port Chalmers, and her dad had been a ship captain. So he'd mastered ships out of Port Chalmers, which would have been an okay wage, and they owned their own home, and as a freestanding home on a little bit of land. Not fancy people, but doing okay. And they're a reasonable number of children because it's that day and age. There is no contraception, obviously, but everything's hunky dory. Dad dies at about 56 years of age, which is even then quite young.
Quite young.
And the oldest son had drowned at 18. So the oldest son had been working since he was about 15, also in shipping, and he had drowned in a shipwreck at the age of 17. So, and that was the year before their dad died.
Right.
So in 2 years, they lost their breadwinners.
Yeah.
So Mum was left at home with children who were younger, and the oldest children surviving were girls.
Right.
And
which obviously earn less.
Yeah.
Even if they can get a job.
Yeah, you can work, but you're never going to be paid what a man is at that day and age. So they have to sell that property within 2 years of Dad's death, and they move into town, and they move into rental accommodation in the worst part of town, like cheapest, lowest socioeconomic. And everybody is working. And Agnes doesn't even have her own bed. She shares a bed with another family member. They work in shifts. They sleep in shifts. Her sister, one of her sisters, gives a lot of information at inquest because she was up at sort of 4 a.m. because one of the brothers is a baker. So she had to be up to make his breakfast before he went out to work. And she knew that Agnes hadn't come home at that time.
It's funny how he's a baker, but he can't make his own breakfast.
Well. But to be fair, that sister didn't work outside of the home, so she may well have felt that was part of her
job.
workday.
Right, yeah.
Mum didn't work in it, but sounds but things Mum wasn't that well by this point in time. Yeah. So I think one of the elder sisters looked after Mum, so it was effectively nurse. The other one looked after the household, and everybody else went out to work. And it's not only brothers and sisters living with them, it's also like a brother's wife is living with them. It's a lot of adults.
It's a lot of people in a small house.
In a small space. Yeah. And they're all earning,
yeah.
but they're not earning enough to get them out of that and into something better.
Yeah.
So thinking that Agnes is in that world, John, they're both young people. She's actually 22 at this time. He's about the same age. He might be a year older. He's working in his family business, but he's not yet set up. He's not yet got enough to independently go and buy a house to house them and thing. They've been dating for years. I mean, any young couple dating for years is not celibate, generally speaking. Yeah. I know that is the expectation of the age, but it's not the reality, and it never has been.
And I guess, they were obviously very much committed to each other, right?
Absolutely,
so there was this total understanding that they were going to get married. There
was an understanding through both families and them that this was a thing that they were going to do. And it sounds like they got pregnant and they weren't ready.
Yeah.
They weren't yet set up. And I also suspect, having kind of considered the time, considered how long they've been together, this is probably not their first rodeo in the score.
Yeah.
So very probably they had already sought, help in this way before, and it had gone fine. And they may have at that point in time paid someone or accessed. There's lots of ways of performing an abortion at the time. None of them are safe and clean because none of them are performed legally. All of them are performed back of house. But there are obviously people who have done a lot of them, and it probably better. And so they may well have done this before and it worked out fine because by all accounts she is happy. No one seems stressed. That there isn't a sense from the families that either of them had been, worrisome or upset at all.
Yeah.
this seems
And there's no reason
like a
to. I mean,
regular day.
there's no reason to have pretended that everything was okay if it wasn't.
No, I don't think her family in particular. I mean, I don't think any of them would have welcomed another human into the household because they were, strained. But those things happened, and those things have always been more accepted in lower class families. Remember, upper class families have always had abortion access. Always. If you've got money, you've got abortion access. That's always happened throughout time. You just pay your doctor. Your doctor doesn't talk about it, but they do it, and it's cleaner and safer than anyone else is going to get access to. Rich people have never had to play by the law. Poor people do have to pay by the law, don't have the money to access safe means, and will be more likely to be prosecuted. That's just
the way that things work.
The way things go.
Which everyone who is our age will know from Dirty Dancing.
I wish I didn't know what you're referring to, but I thoroughly do. In fact, I watched that film about 9 times one summer when it came out on VHS. But
it's exactly that privilege thing.
Yes.
And, in that case, baby's father is a doctor.
Yeah, and he can fix it.
He can fix for her friend.
And it's not the first time he's seen an abortion either, is it? They would. Polite people don't talk about it. It's not talked about in nice society, but it's a reality.
Yeah.
And we didn't keep any statistics at the time because it's illegal, right?
Because it's illegal. So how would you
don't keep statistics? Well, it's interesting we say that. It's illegal. We don't keep any statistics about it. But what you can keep statistics on is how many women show up in sepsis at your hospital.
Right.
Because
sepsis is blood poisoning, right?
And this is what happens routinely when you seek a backstreet abortion is things are not clean and you get an infection, and that kills an extraordinary number of women.
And of course, we're talking about a time before antibiotics, before general kind of antiseptic germ theory.
Well, I mean,
it was
1903, we've got some concept, but
But it's not kind of ingrained like it is in today's cleaning. I mean, these are people who are...
These are not single-use implements out of a nice sterilised wrapper. No.
Yeah.
No. And so what had been discovered in the bag that had been abandoned by John was some rubber tubing and a few other bits and pieces.
Right.
And so it sounds like this is a fairly known, even to today, kind of way of creating, of eliminating the tissue that you don't want inside a uterus is through suction. So the implements that were found with him sound like they were very probably what was used.
Right. And they eventually did find him, didn't they?
They did eventually find him. It took months till they found him. And he was in the harbour, but I suspect he was weighted down. He had tied his necktie around his ankles, and I actually wonder if he'd weighted himself in some way. And he was trapped under Tongue Wharf. So they found him some months later, which I don't know how his family did identify him, but I hate to think.
Yeah, it must have been horrendous.
Yeah.
So it's quite a sad story.
It's an incredibly sad story.
From all sides.
Two young people gone like that over a family planning decision. Over a decision which today many of us would consider being entirely responsible and reasonable. Like they weren't ready. They didn't have the money to do this. They didn't have the life to do this.
Yeah.
And yes, you could say, well, they could have a quickie wedding and have a baby. Yeah, but they literally do not have the funds to live.
Yeah.
They would be, particularly for Agnes, who is living in really difficult circumstances, she will know full well what it is.
And babies are expensive.
To continue in this way, absolutely.
Because not only is it the costs of the baby, but also you lose her salary because you can't go to work. Exactly. You can't work as a tailoress if you've got a baby.
Yeah. So even though she's earning a quarter of what a man does, it's still money.
It's still money, yeah.
And it is a time where there's a notorious abortionist in Dunedin. There's a guy who works as a chemist who, not at this time, he hasn't been prosecuted, but he is prosecuted later. And his chemist shop so John lives in South Dunedin. To get to Agnes's work and then down to where Agnes lives, he would walk along Princess Street. This chemist shop was on Princess Street. He almost certainly passed this chemist shop. Whether this was the guy who supplied them with what they used, we don't know. But that's, these people existed. They're known. We just don't talk about it. So the paper is really, really cloudy about what they're talking about. But you can read between the lines. And when you go and read the actual inquest report, which is published in the paper as well.
Which is interesting, actually, that they published the inquest report.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, no. It's still a reporter sitting in the inquest publishing. So they haven't given you the nitty-gritty. But they do report a lot of detail. And again, you can read between the lines.
Right.
What I've always kind of wanted to know was there a third party involved? Like, had they agreed to meet someone there who was helping them or not, and that person just up to left because, you know, I don't know. But yeah, I went from thinking, here's another young man who's, you know, murdered a young woman.
That was my first thoughts as well. And I guess
deeply tragic story. Yeah. I mean, not that a murder would not be deeply tragic, but I think they loved each other. I think this went horribly wrong. Yeah. And he was incredibly upset and he couldn't live without her.
Yeah. It seems from all accounts that's what the newspapers thought as well, because there was all this talk about carriages going to Oamaru.
He's absconded, which is what would happen, right? If you've murdered someone, generally you flee and you don't kill yourself. Yeah. You flee and you go. And it's so easy to start a new life in New Zealand at this time. Like you just pop off up north,
make up a new name, and
you get to Timaru and no one's going to know who you are.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't
because no internet, no social media, no one's hunting you down. I mean, the ODT's doing their best, but no. He it looks like he went immediately. He worked out she was dead and he immediately took himself to the harbour and threw himself in,
Which is, quite sad in all respects, and I guess...
But this is what happens when you don't legalise reproductive health care. Yeah. I'm sorry, but I do consider this story... We forget because although abortion hasn't been legal throughout our lifetimes... Yeah. It was obtainable legally if you were prepared to pretend that you were mentally unwell as a result of or whatever. You had to jump through hoops, but it was kind of readily available. But for our grandmothers, it wasn't.
Yeah, and it's we sort of think, this was ages ago, this was 1903, but actually this was happening right up into our lives.
Absolutely. Well, even my mother's generation had to be engaged before they could get the pill. Yeah. And they're first generation pill users, right? Yeah. So,
not just the pill, but any contraceptive.
Absolutely, because if you're not married, you're not having sex, which is just that's not ever been the reality of human beings. It's a perfectly normal part of life. And then, when you construct a society that doesn't support mothers and children and just say everyone's on their own, literally, again, we don't realise that how recently it was that people didn't have a social welfare
it goes back to that system. Idea of community, because
totally
back when you don't have a social welfare system, then community is the only support you have.
Absolutely.
And if suddenly a key person, like the father in this case and the older brother, suddenly are dead, they're not providing, and you've got this skew in society where men are providers and women can't make that same amount of money.
Legally can't make the money.
Yeah, and they can't, they can't hold title and just the whole, And by this stage, women had the vote in New Zealand.
They did, yes. They didn't when my Agnes landed.
Yeah. But still, it's quite kind of, there's still those societal rules, and I think, I would say there's quite a lot of kind of that Victorian church.
Well, certainly Dunedin, Presbyterian church, huge backbone. You would, but again, the church is not going to support you getting an abortion, are they? No.
No, and that's where a lot of these societal norms are really decreed by the church, and there's a kind of a lot of judgment into society.
Oh, well,
there was
we've always been good at judging others, haven't we? But I do also wonder how much of it is, Pākehā travelled here still relatively recently, So my 3 times great grandmother is my first generation of. Kind of the first generations, there's multiple in my family that came out here. So mid 1800s. Yeah. They have left every skerrick of community they have where they've lived to come here. So they have their family and then they have to build new. Yeah. And in my great-great-great-grandmother's case, she came to Dunedin first. She was married within the year that she landed, so she's part of a new family now. They travel down to the Catlins first and try a business then before they travel into Southland. It takes many years before they're really actually settled and then able to build a community. My grandparents, who lived in Southland, had a wonderful community around them, but I feel that was something that really only happened after a couple of generations. Now, Agnes, born in Port Chalmers, possibly they had a bit more community around them there, couldn't afford to stay there once Dad and
then
was dead.
Back in the day, Port Chalmers and Dunedin were actually quite a long way away.
Yeah. I mean, there's a train.
There's a train, which there isn't now.
Absolutely. But yes, it's not 5 minutes. Nothing in town is a 5 minute journey, really. Although that said, John is walking from South Dunedin to what we call now Harrow Street.
Yeah.
Most days to see her kind of thing. I mean, and that's not a huge walk. It's probably 45 minutes, maybe now. But yeah, and then there is clearly some community around them. There's a comment in the ODT that her funeral is very well attended. So they process from her. She's left and stayed at home, and then they take her up to the Northern Cemetery where she's buried. Yeah. And there is apparently, a good procession of people that go with it. So she's known in the neighbourhood, but it's still like, I think this is a road too far, the I don't want to be pregnant and I want to get rid of it is a road too far, even in lower classes at this point, to really probably talk about with a lot of people. And of course, it's illegal, you never know who's going to dob you in.
It's crazy, isn't it?
But yeah, and it's not until the 30s where we start to actually collect statistics quite deliberately on the number of women showing up in hospital with sepsis as a result of attempted abortions.
Right. That's quite interesting how you came onto that line of
because once I knew what the story was about, I really wanted to understand more about this. Because again, from my perspective in life, had I wished to access abortion at any point, I've probably been able to. Like, definitely socially still quite taboo. There'd be lots of people who would judge me for it, but still quite accessible. And I've always been able to access contraception.
Right.
Even when I tried to get it as a student, it was a bit of a there were a lot of I felt like there was a bit of judgment cast. But anyway, in the grand scheme of things, very easy to access. And you take your experiences for granted, and it's very difficult to relate to previous. And so in a time where there's no contraception, no access to abortion, what is the reality in terms of live births? And the statistics suggest that about a quarter of live births, not live births, about a quarter of conceptions are terminated.
Yeah, which is quite a high mark,
which is a huge amount. But it's because there are no other options. And women have never been happy to just accept this is what I have to do. Yes, you plan your family, you have your children, you love them. Sometimes you don't plan your family, you have your children, you love them. And if you've got the means, that's all great.
It's turning into quite a Mother's Day special,
isn't it? But yeah, when you don't have choices and life is hard, you make hard decisions and you take big risks.
Yeah, and sometimes it's about prioritising the children that you already have.
Exactly.
Like if you're really struggling to feed the children. The statistics have
always shown that the majority of people seeking abortion already have children. Yeah. It is not that they don't want to have children, it's that they cannot afford, whether it be time, money or, quality of life, to have more.
Yeah, no, and I guess that's...
And men have never been expected to carry the burden of contraception.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Wow, yeah. Funny there. So women get blamed for this. Women get the legal penalties for this, but, it does take two to tango.
It takes two to tango.
And men can pregnate a lot more women.
Yeah, it is quite, it's...
We have it backwards. We absolutely
have it all backwards.
Yeah.
We do. We have it all backwards. And I guess that's probably where we're almost going to leave it today.
But you can find... So if you just Google the Tanna Hill mystery...
Have you written it up?
No, I haven't written up my thing. But you can go and find it in the original ODT articles.
You should write a little short story on it.
Well, it's written in presentation form. There's a whole PowerPoint that comes with it.
You could publish it like Dickens, like a episode...
Honestly, there's a whole lot of stories about Dunedin that when I'm retired, because I really don't have time now, I would love to, just do like a little collection of short stories.
Series.
There's some really fascinating people, but not like when you go to the cemeteries, like you go to the Northern Cemetery and they have like all these arrows pointing to Thomas Bracken, who wrote our national anthem, and I'm sorry, Thomas, but I don't appreciate our national anthem. I think it's a terrible tune, but that's fine. Yeah. And there's a huge, like Larnac has a huge tomb, which is just ridiculous.
There's lots of really big ones for ship captains and things as well.
Like important men got big tombs, and they're generally written about, and they're not the history I care about in any way, shape, or form. I love normal people history. I love everyday people. I don't want to know about lords and ladies and kings and queens. I want to know about the average person.
It's so much harder.
It's
to
so
find
much
out
harder,
about
which
the
is
average
why
person.
it's more worthwhile. Like that's why I love that stuff, because you really have to dig deep, and you'll never know the full picture, but you can kind of put together things. Like obviously the newspaper doesn't tell you about Agnes's early life, but I was able to go and find all that information. There are pictures of both Agnes and John in the Otago Witness.
Oh, right. Doing what?
Just portraits. So after they died, the Otago Witness comes out once a month, maybe once a week.
Once a week.
And it's focused on pictures. That's its point.
Right.
So it kind of repeats a lot of the news of the week, but it gives you pictures. So it had obviously gone to the families, and it had found, because photography is kind of...
Just sort of...
It's not new. It's
not
now
new,
accessible.
But it's starting.
It's now available. You can go to a studio and put down, a reasonable sum of money that isn't outrageous and get a portrait. Yeah. So lots of people did this. Yeah. So they obviously both had portraits done. So there are portrait photos of both Agnes and John in the Otago Witness.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And
it makes me want to rush out and get a portrait photo.
But what we've left is the internet, where there's a million photos.
I know, but they're all crap.
Yes, maybe you've got a better chance if you pay someone to take a nice portrait. I don't know.
Anyway.
Hey, thank you so much for coming along today, Morag.
It's a very interesting tale, and it's interesting just to hear about, whole parts of Dunedin that
we've erased.
That we've erased.
A bit like Bell Hill, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit like Bell Hill.
We don't like hills, apparently.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because the basin part of Dunedin is kind of flat.
But it's not.
But it's not. And the
bits
few
that are
bits
flat, we've dredged out of the sea.
It's crazy. Anyway, hey, thank you very much. You've been listening to the OI podcast with Dr. Barb in conversation with Morag McKenzie from, I guess, Vintage Pearls, but earlier from the University of Otago. Hey, the by-election OI special is still out there live. Morag, you've got your votes in?
Yes.
Excellent.
Delivered in by hand to the library, yep.
So you can deliver, there's orange boxes all over the place, libraries.
If you deliver to the South Dunedin Library, you get a thumbs up from the librarian, which is really cool, yeah.
That's really cool, yeah. And it's a bit late now for posting them, so don't post them. Put them in an orange box. There's always the orange boxes at the DCC main building there by the ICE site. If your voting papers have not arrived in the mail, vote. You can still vote, do a special vote. You just go down to the DCC building. You don't have to take ID or anything. You just fill out a declaration, do your special vote then. And remember that those OI candidate interviews are still up there. You can access them through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, iHeart, any of those places where you get podcasts, or you can go directly to www.otago-institute.org. And thank you very much. We will see you next week. The shout out for the arts, sciences and Mataranga Māori.
You can support this podcast by becoming a member of the OI. Check out the Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences on Facebook or our website.
If you'd like to listen again to this episode or others from the series, look for the OI podcast on ORFM's website, oar.org.nz.
Brought to you by the Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences, the Otago branch of the Royal Society of New Zealand.
This podcast was produced by ORFM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.